What is going on, guys? In today's video, I will show you the top 3 best Blood Mage builds in Path of Exile 2. If you are looking for any of these builds on the website, then click my link in the description or the pinned comment. So the setup just became very OP again in the recent patch and is mainly structured around using 2 skills, like Sacrifice and Skeletal Brute, for both AoV and single target damage. While then further we can increase our DPS by casting Detonate Dead, which explodes dead enemy corpses and lets us speed farm every single content in the game. This build is the best of both worlds because it combines very quick clearing speed with aggressive playstyle while also having minions that protect you, and in the endgame we will be able to reach from 15 to 13,000 energy shield, which will basically turn us into an unstoppable puppet master. And on top of this, unlike other Mage setups, our build will also focus on the Grim Feast buff, which is used to provide the extremely strong defensive layer by doubling our energy shield in the maps, so that you can easily complete the highest tiers in the game and much more. So let me show you the build, and for the main class we are going with the Witch and our ascendancy is the Blood Mage. Then for first skill we have Detonate Dead with support gems like Magnified Effect, Spell Echo, Corpse Conversion, Ambush and Minion Pact. And don't forget to keep this skill at level 7, so this way we could save the cost on mana and life as our damage will not increase with more levels. Then second we get the Skeletal Brute with the Mage Shield, Minion Mastery and the Physical Mastery. Then next we get Skeletal Cleric with Ingenuity, Arcane Tempo and the Last Gasp. Then next we have Sacrifice and a Grim Feast with no support gems. Next we got a Soul Offering with Ablation, Persistence and Fauna Blood. And finally we are using the Mana Tempest with Premeditation, Murderous Intent and Inspiration. Most of the setup is structured around using our Detonate Dead skill to delete enemies in split seconds. So we use gems and skills that will support and increase their duration and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the spell and minion damage node, and then go like this while getting all of these 6. So Route Destruction, Practice Signs, Pure Energy, Living Death, Dampening Shield and a Critical Overload. Then from here we want to go to the right and get these 3, so Relentless Fallen, Necrotized Flesh and the Grave Digger. Next we want to circle back a little and then get these 2, so Melding and the Critical Exploit. And then finally we want to go all the way up here and then get the Meat Recycling. Then afterwards we want to go all the way back to this point and then keep on going until we get to the sudden escalation. And then from here you want to go all the way up to the left side, and only from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of these nodes that we got are very useful, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then later on the priority won't really matter that much. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Sanguimancy, as it provides life recovery on kill and on critical strikes by spawning the life remnants. This not only can increase life by more than 100%, but also cause all spells to cost life as well as mana, and drain your life and mana while casting the Mana Tempest. Then second we get the Gore Spike. This will give us an extra damage in the form of critical damage bonus based on our life. Then third we get the Southern the Flesh. This will basically double our critical chance, and it is the main reason of why we are going with the Blood Mage Ascendancy in the first place. And finally we are using the Blood Burbs. This one will provide extra damage and allow the lightning damage from the Mana Tempest to contribute to the bleed as well. So feel free to use this exact same path as we have right here, and don't forget to check this video's description to find the link for this website, and this should make it easier for you to follow the path. Next up we have our Atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, like in expeditions or in rituals. So when we start we want to first of all go to the right side and get all of these nodes, and then keep going down until you get to the keystone called the Deadly Evolution. And then from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you want. But then on top of this we have the sub-passives, and their order in which you unlock them doesn't really matter, so this time it's up to you. And this is how it should look like for the ritual. Then next we have Delirium. Then third we have the bosses. Then on top of that we have the pinnacle bosses. Then next we also have our expedition setup, and then finally our breach setup. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Innocence Charge. This is a cheap weapon that provides good spell damage and a critical hit chance increase. It also provides 25% chance to not destroy corpses when consuming them, which will stack up to 75% in the combination with our gems. Then also we got an offhand called the Omen Scepter with the bonus stats like increased spirit, more levels to all minion skills, and minions have increased max life. Then for helmet we have Adziri's Disdain with energy shield. This is yet another unique item that isn't required but is the best in slot for the most efficient source of energy shield and max life in the early game. Then for chest we have the Expert Altar Robe with energy shield, and for more we got max and increased energy shield, more to spirit as well as cold and fire damage. Then for belt we have the Utility Belt with 20% faster flask recovery. And for more we want max life, max energy shield, more to charm slots and lightning resistance. Then for gloves we got the Expert Interested Gloves with energy shield. And for more we have max and increased energy shield, max life, critical damage bonus and lightning and chaos resistance. Then for boots we're using the Expert Feather Sandals with energy shield. And for more we need increased movement speed, max and increased energy shield, as well as cold and fire resistance. Then for our first and second ring we got the same one called the Prismatic Ring with more to all elemental resistances, max life, lightning and chaos resistance. And then finally for amulet we have the Solar Amulet with extra spirit. And for bonus stats we got max energy shield, max life, more to spirit and more levels to all minion skills. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is the best case scenario setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work, and I will give you 2 rotations. So first up we have the AoV farming, and for this one we simply just want to maintain a distance between our minions and the enemy groups, and just run around while using Detonate Dead to target enemy corpses. However, if there are no corpses to detonate, then just make sure that you direct your minions to a place where you want them to be. And then for single targets, this time we want to start by using Soul Offering on one of our skeletal brutes. Then afterwards we cast the Mana Tempest and stand in it while spamming the Detonate Dead for massive amounts of damage. And then finally, if you ever run out of minions and the boss is still alive, then wait for them to respawn and repeat the same rotation all over again. So this is an endgame build that is structured around using the Hexblast in the combination with other chaos skills that will curse and explode enemies in split seconds. Overall, Hexblast has quite high mana cost, and to make it efficient we are going to be using the Masked of the Sanguimancer, which will give us blood magic and increase critical hit chance. So now we can convert mana cost into life. On top of this, when possible we can also use the Asteris gloves to get instant leech from our critical hits. So then this combination would completely remove the mana from the equation and give us ability to infinitely spam the Hexblast and do massive amounts of damage. The main gameplay idea behind our setup is to one-shot most enemies, and as they die, they will continuously replenish our life and energy shield. However, for the bosses we will need to be careful, as not getting stun locked is our main priority, and that's why we will use a specific setup, such as putting Unbreakable Gem into our Hexblast slot and much more. So let me show you the build, and for the main class, I have chosen to go with the Witch and our ascendancy is Blood Mage. Then for the first skill, we have the Hexblast with support gems such as Inspiration, Considered Casting, Arcane Tempo, Unbreakable and Concentrated Effect. Then second, we get the Dark Effigy with the Envenom, Comorbidity, Ancestral Urgency and the Withering Touch. Then next we got Blasphemy with Despair, Magnified Effect and the Ritualistic Curse. Next we have Blink with Ingenuity. Next up we have the Sigil of the Power with no support gems. Next we got Cast on Critical with Contagion, Essence Drain, the Chaotic Freeze, Energy Retention and the Impetus. And next we have Grim Feast with no support gems. Then next we have the Soul Offering with the Persistence, Minion Mastery and Ablation. And finally for the last one we are using the Skeletal Warrior with the Mage Shield, Last Gasp and the Elemental Army. Most of this setup is structured around using the Hexblast to delete enemies in split seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their duration and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Also, don't forget that we are using 2 weapons, so in the first weapon slot we are going with the Blasphemy and the Cast on Critical, while in the second one we have the Skeletal Warrior and the Blink. Next up we have our passive tree. And if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this energy shield node, and then go like this while getting all of these 5. So there are Destruction, Practice Signs, Pure Energy, Dampening Shield, and the Critical Overload. Then from here we now move to the right and get all of these 4. So Melding, Critical Exploit, Lingering Horror, and the Royal. Then afterwards we circle back a little and then keep going until this point and then go to the left. And here we want to get all of these 3, so the Sudden Escalation, Void, and the Heavy Buffer. And then from this point and onwards you can go here and up to the top, and just unlock all the other nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of these nodes that we got are very useful, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Sanguimancy. This one is just required to take for every Blood Mage, which will make all of our spells will now cast life as well as mana. Then second we get Vitality Siphon, which will give us Life Leech. This is currently the only way on how to get it, as this will give us a ton of extra recovery and make it very useful, especially against bosses. Then third we get Gore Spike. This will increase our critical damage for every 40 life. Ideally, we want to get as high critical bonus as possible. And then finally we get Southern the Flesh. This will allow us to remove some critical hit chance passives and allocate them to the other gem nodes to not go over 100%. And don't forget to check this video's description to find the link for this website, and this should make it easier for you to follow the path. Next up we have our Atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. So when we start we want to first of all go to the right side and get all of these nodes, and then keep going down until you get to this keystone called the Deadly Evolution. And then from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you want. But then on top of this we have even more passives, which order in which you unlock them doesn't really matter. So this time it's up to you. And this is how it should look like for the ritual. Then next we have Delirium. Then third we have the bosses, and then on top of that we have the pinnacle bosses. Next we also have our expedition setup, and then finally our breach setup. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Withering Wand with a Chaos Bolt. And for bonus stats we want more extra lightning damage, increased spell and chaos damage, then also plus levels to all chaos spells, and increased critical hit chance and cast speed. On top of this, we also have the second weapon slot in which we are using the Chimming Staff for the Sigil of the Power. And for more we want more levels of all spell skills and increased critical hit chance. And don't forget about the specific abilities I told you to slot in for each weapon in my skill gem part of this video. And then also for the first weapon we got an offhand called the Advanced Antler Focus with Energy Shield. And for more we want even more max energy shield, increased spell and chaos damage, plus levels of all spell skills and increased critical hit chance and cast speed. Then for the helmet we have the Mask of the Sanguimancer. And during long boss fights we will run into a mana problem, and even just to scale our spamminess of the build we wanna use it, and this will give us blood magic which will convert our mana cost into life. So this is the only required item that you need for this build to work efficiently. Then for chest we have Expert Hexer's Robe with the Energy Shield, and for more we got even more max energy shield, max life, more to spirit, and fire, cold and chaos resistance. Then for the belt we have the long belt with increased charm effect duration, and for more we want max life, increased flask life recovery and charm effect duration, as well as plus charm slots, and then finally we also want the fire and chaos resistance. Then for gloves we got the Acerus with armor. This is not required, however, if you want to scale your damage to the max and completely remove mana cost from our life, then we want to get these gloves as well. Then for boots we're using the Expert Feather Sandals with the Energy Shield, and for more we need increased movement speed, max energy and life, and also cold, lightning and chaos resistance. Then for the first ring we have the Amethyst Ring with the chaos resistance, and for bonus stats we got increased chaos damage, max life, increased cast speed, more to all elemental resistances and chaos resistance. While for the second one we have the Pearl Ring with increased cast speed. And for more we want increased chaos damage, max life, increased cast speed more to all elemental resistances and chaos resistance. And then finally for amulet we have the solar amulet with more to spirit. And for extras we got max life and energy shield, then even more to spirit, then plus levels to all spell skills, then even increased critical hit chance and more percentage to all elemental resistances. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is just a starter setup, which would be more of an example of what stats and prefixes that you need to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. And this setup is pretty straightforward. So for mapping we simply want to spam the Hexblast, which when we reduce our mana cast to pretty much 0 and increase our cast speed, then we can even further maximize our DPS output. On top of this, because of the insane spam potential, so we won't have to worry about the enemies, as they will die very quickly. However, for stronger targets, watch out for stuns and getting stun locked, which is the only real danger that we want to avoid as much as possible. And then finally for the boss fights, this time we want to start by activating the Sigil of the Power. And then from this point just again spam the Hexblast until the boss dies. And then just reactivate debuffs as soon as they expire. This setup is known as the Bonestorm Witch build, and this skill by itself is a slow clearing ability, but with the right gems, passives and synergies, we can make it 100 times better, and this is exactly what we have right here. This build also has 2 variants, so going full crit chance, what I will personally be doing for myself, or then perhaps go with the Detonate a dead variant. Both of these will excel at different things, so which one you choose is up to you. This variant, so the full crit chance setup, excels at huge amount of damage. We won't be focusing on anything else besides the massive crits and stacking as much life as possible, because the more life/defense we have, the more damage we can do in return. Also, at some point in the later game, some lowered gear players might run into a mana problem, but lucky for us, the Witch has many tools to address this problem, and with optimized gear we need nothing more than a single stat roll on our weapon or the gear to completely solve this issue. So if you are finally looking for a super fun Blood Mage build that primarily doesn't use the life leech, but instead goes full life and full crit, then this is the one for you. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the Witch, and our ascendancy is the Blood Mage. Then for the first skill we have the Bonestorm, with support gems such as the Brutality, Arcane Tempo, Inevitable Critical and the Super Critical. Then second we got the Bone Cage with the Spell Cascade, Lockdown and the Splinter. Then next we got the Life Remnant with the Vitality, Clarity and the Cannibalism. Then next we have the Combat Frenzy with the Perfusion, Pin and the Potential. And finally for the last one we got the Bone Blast with no support gems. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the spell and minion damage increase node. Then next we want to keep on going like this until we get to our first stop, which is the potent incantation. Then now keep on going to the right side to get this critical exploit. Then now we circle back a little and keep going like this until we get the sudden escalation. Then now from this point we go down like this, then take the right path and keep going until this point, and then keep going all the way up until the Tempered Mind. Then next we go down a bit and then take right, which will take us all the way to our first keystone, the Resonance. Then from this point we want to circle back again and simply get the last 2 priority nodes called the Power Within and the last 4 Power. And then finally from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of the nodes that we got are important, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. Also, as far as attributes go, so you just simply want to fill your attribute requirements for the gear and skill gems, and then after that, spend the rest of your leftover attributes into more strength. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Sangumancy, but please don't get it too early. This node is required for every Blood Mage, and this ability does ton of self damage, and it can be quite hard to mitigate this in the early game. So I recommend for you to wait until you complete your second trial, and then take your first and second Ascendancy at the same time. So then after the second trial you want to get the Grasping Wounds. This one will make you significantly tankier and synergize very well with the Sangumancy. So as I said before, get both these Ascendancies at the same time. Then next, take the Gore Spike. This will scale off your maximum life and is a big damage boost. And then finally for the fourth option, you want to take the Crimson Power, as this will give you a massive energy shield body armor, and this will also scale really well with our previous Gore Spike. Next up we have our Atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or the rituals. Our Bonestorm Blood Mage build won't be doing crazy amount of damage against single targets, so we mainly want to do very small farming in boss maps or the essences. So then when we start, we want to first of all get this bottom right side like this, then from here go like this until we get all the way to the left side. And then when all of these passives are done, then now we go again to the middle, and now take the middle path and then go a bit to the left again and get all of these nodes. Then next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Attuned Wand with the mana drain, and for the extra bonuses we want increased spell damage, plus 3 levels to all physical spell skills, then also increased critical hit chance, and more percentage to critical damage bonus. Next we also have the offhand called the Emblem Crest Shield, with the armor and energy shield. This specific shield is the best job that I got, but it's not required. However, for bonuses we want max life, cold and fire resistance. Remember that our main goal is to stack as much life and resistances as possible, so that's why you will see few stats repeating all over again. Then for the helmet we have the Expert Vicar Tiara with the energy shield, and for more we want max life, cold and fire resistance. Then for the chest we have the Guild Vestments with the armor and energy shield. And for bonus stats we need max life, evasion rating and the fire resistance. Then for the belt we have the Rawhide belt with the increased recovery to the flask, and for the extras we want max life, lightning and chaos resistance. Then for the gloves we got the Torn gloves with the energy shield, and for more we want max life, increased armor and evasion. Then for boots we're using the Bushwhack with the evasion. For this build we will need to get these boots or use the pin gem on our Combat Frenzy. So which option you prefer, it's up to you. But if you have the pin, then the boots are not required, but still very powerful. So get it or not, but at least go with as high movement speed as possible. Then also get evasion rating and more to dexterity. Then for the first ring, get the Ruby ring with fire resistance, and for more we want max life, lightning and chaos resistance. While on the second one we got the Sapphire ring with cold resistance, and for more get max life, fire or lightning resistance. And finally for the amulet, get the Solar Amulet with more to spirit and max life. No matter which gear you choose, at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. Our main rotation will be the same, no matter if you choose to go with the full crit or the detonator variant. So for weak enemies we simply want to choose a target, and then just spam the Bonestorm with the Bone Cage. And then for bosses or elites we still do the same thing, just this time also integrate the Bone Blast with the Bonestorm and the Bone Cage, and it's that easy. Most of our buffs will work in the background, which will give us the real damage, so then all you have to do is get used to the mechanics, which are mainly to use the channeling trick, then to be kiting enemies 24/7 and pick up the life remnants. And then from here just spam the Bonestorm and the Bone Cage and have fun.